All right, I want to talk in this video about the concept of social influence. Now, that is a term, a social psychological term, that you're probably pretty familiar with today. In the age of social media, we have a group of people who are called social influencers, right? People that are paid to go to resorts or dress in clothes or use particular products because they've got a lot of followers on social media, and those followers are more likely to maybe visit that place or use that particular product. So that's social influence. And it's actually based on a social psychological concept that we're going to take a look at. Now, you don't have to be though, a celebrity to have social influence. And you don't have to follow celebrities on social media to be influenced by them. And so let's look at what the social psychological concept is. This is our definition of social influence: the ways people affect one another, changes in attitudes, beliefs, feelings, and behavior that result from interactions with others. So, if it's the way that our attitudes can change because we interact with somebody else, or the ways that other people can change our attitudes with those interactions. And you see this a lot, right? If you've watched, movies, one of the things that we see quite a bit in movies is you'll have kind of in rom-coms, you'll have a couple that really doesn't seem like they have anything in common, and there's no way that these two people would ever kind of, kind of get together. But the situation causes them to see something in each other that maybe they weren't familiar with. If you want to look at like the greatest romance of all time in The Empire Strikes Back between Han Solo and Princess Leia, two characters where you look and go, these people don't have a whole lot in common, but over the course of those movies, those shared experiences and things, it changes their attitudes towards each other. Now, there are some key terms when we look at social influence. The first is conformity. And so this is the easiest type of, or kind of least abrasive type of social influence. So people change because of pressure that gets put on, kind of peer pressure. And that can be good or bad, depending on what the action is. But basically, folks either feel like there's pressure, or there actually is pressure that's being put on people in order to make them conform. Right? If somebody's a member of a team, and one person just isn't pulling their weight on the team, or isn't playing as hard as everybody else is, right? Their teammates can influence them by their own hustle, right? By taking care of their own business and playing very hard. Or it could be something where it's explicit. They have a team meeting and say, "Look, you're not getting it done. We expect you to be doing better." And so things that go that way could be could get conformity that's going to be there. Now, let's say the coach though wanted the player to do something in particular, and makes a request. I want you to do this. And so that could be compliance, right? The coach asked me to do something, and so I will be compliant. I will do exactly what I've been asked to do. So that's a second type of social influence. The final one is obedience. And so let's say the coach has had enough, right? And nothing, the peer pressure from the teammates isn't working. The coach asking didn't have the desired effect. And so now we move to obedience. And basically it's a authority figure saying, you're going to do this, because if you don't, you're not going to play in the game. Or you're not going to participate in the match, whatever it is that you're doing. But they use that power they have over you to make you conform, right? And so, as you can see, going from there up, you go from least aggressive, kind of more subtle up to just you're going to do this or you're not going to play or you're not going to be allowed to participate. And it doesn't just have to be sports. This could be this could be in a classroom. This could be in a work environment, depending on what type of leadership style that group, the group leader's showing. Those types of things, it's kind of the same spectrum. Those things moving up. Now, if you remember back in Psych 101, we talked about the Solomon Asch Conformity Experiment. And Solomon Asch Conformity Experiment was all about peer pressure, right? They took those guys into a room and said, tell us how long these lines are. Well, one person wasn't in on it, but everybody else is given the wrong answer. So we want to see if people will comply in order to fit in with the group. Now, I have a couple of examples. I put the one I showed you in 101 up there just in case you needed a refresher, but I've got a couple of other videos I'll put up on the playlist that are really cool, kind of neat spins in the modern world on the Solomon Asch Conformity Experiment. So you may want to check those out.
Okay.
There are some factors. Psychologists have done experimentations like Solomon Asch. There are some factors that influence how people, how likely they are to conform. One idea or one thing about conformity is the bigger the group is, the more likely people are to conform. So if it's just you and one other person or you and two other people, it can be a little easier to resist that conformity. If it's a big group, usually people will conform, right? So as the group size goes up, so does the likelihood of conformity. Group unanimity. And so if everybody else in the group is agreeing, then it is much harder for someone not to conform. If one other person doesn't agree, right? So say we did that Solomon Asch Conformity Experiment again, and now all of a sudden, we have two people that aren't going to say the wrong line length. Now that person's got a partner, somebody they can be nonconformist with. So if you've got that, that can be something. If you've got a unanimous group, that can be somebody that's something that's very powerful. But if you've got somebody and you don't want to conform, and that's going to be a possibility, then it's easier that way. We will conform a lot of times if we are following what we feel like are very smart people. So if it's something that we don't know a whole lot about it, or it's very technical, maybe very scientific, we will follow people who are perceived to be experts. And so that can be a really good thing. That can also be a really bad thing, right? As I'm doing this, we're in the middle of this pandemic, right? And there are experts on infectious disease that are saying, hey, this is what needs to happen. But you also have other people with doctorates and experience. They're saying, well, wait a minute, we're not real sure about that. And so then you get in, obviously, with the kind of what we were talking about with confirmation bias, right? Then people just seek out and say, well, this guy's an expert too, and he says this. And so it really helps if you've got kind of everybody in a particular vein pulling the same way when you're doing that. It can also go back to culture, right? Peer pressure is much more powerful in interdependent cultures, right? So collectivist cultures, like we studied in a few weeks ago, it's much more of an influence there than it is in independent cultures. And finally, there are gender factors that are there. Women are usually more likely to conform than men. That's not always the case, but when they do these types of experiments, usually women will conform a little bit more, and a lot of that's just in the nature. We've seen a lot of different differences between genders as we've looked at some of these concepts, and this is just another one of those that women will conform maybe a little more often than men. So that's conformity. Now, when we get to compliance, compliance, usually there's a little bit of a trade-off in what's going on, right? So you look at this little cartoon I've got here for you. My diabetic research shows that test subjects are 98% more likely to take their diabetic pills if those pills are covered in chocolate. Well, if you're taking a diabetic pill covered in chocolate, it's probably negating some of the effects, right? So there are a couple of ways that we can get compliance. There are a couple of techniques you can use to do this. And one of the first things we learn as a kid, right, is what's called the norm of reciprocity. Now, we don't know that is what it is, but it's a trade-off, right? I want this, or I want you to do this for me, so I will do this for you, right? And so you owe me one, kind of thing, right? If I do this for you, then you have to do this one for me. Now, this is always kind of funny. I'm a big fan of The Big Bang Theory. And so Sheldon, the main character on The Big Bang Theory, hates when people give him presents because he feels like then that he owes them a present that is the same in cost and thought put into it and things like that. And it just gets exhausting for him because he thinks that he's got to pay it back exactly the same as what was there. You can also use the door in the face technique. The door in the face technique is you ask for something kind of crazy, knowing that you're going to get a no, right? So you come in and you need $50 to buy something that you want. But you go in and you ask your parents at first for $1,000. Hey, I just need $1,000 to get this. Your parents are going to be like, that's crazy. There's no way that we're giving you that much money. You say, well, all right, I guess I understand. Now I could do this and it's $50. And see, it sounds like they're getting a great deal, right? And so that is called the door in the face technique. The next one is called the that's not all technique. And if you've ever watched any infomercials, you see this one, right? Order my product right now for $19.99. But wait, if you order in the next 10 minutes, we'll double the amount that we're going to give you. And so it's you throw in a little something extra in order to sweeten the pot. The last one is what's called the foot in the door technique. And the foot in the door technique is where you ask for something and you get a yes, and then you push to get more. So it's kind of the opposite of the door in the face technique, right? Here you're trying to get a yes, and then you're going to try and stretch that yes for as much as you can get. And so those are ways that people will try to influence other people and to get them to comply with whatever it is that they might need. So those are social influencing techniques. I've got some videos I'll load up for you on the playlist that are really good examples of some of these things. So be sure to check those out.